I wasn't going to speak on this, but this is starting to get way out of control. I don't know when this trend started or why it's a thing or what. I don't know what started it. I don't know if Dell Crypto started it, triggered it, set it off. I don't know. I don't know, but I felt I need to speak on it because it's getting worse. It seems as though many of these tokens, a lot of them, don't seem to understand the acronym AMA stands for Ask Me Anything. When we say ask me anything, that normally means anybody can ask whatever questions they want. Instead, certain of these tokens are taking the AMA as basically some sort of a good old boys, gathering at the bar type of chatting and laughing and talking about absolute nonsense that had nothing to do with the token. Number one. Number two, you get other tokens where they'll just take and pick and choose and cherry pick questions that they like, and they're not answering the hard questions, and they're not allowing anybody to ask the hard questions. Or three, we see where there's this, it's just a bunch of arguing. I don't know when it got off the rails and when we lost sight of what an AMA is supposed to do and how it's supposed to solve a problem. When you do an AMA, first of all, you should introduce the fact that you're doing an AMA and you want the smoke. You ideally should say, we are open to any questions that you have, but we're going to stay on target with the questions. Your introduction to the AMA should not extend past 5 minutes at the stretch. When I see these AMAs with people and all they're doing, again, is chatting like good old boys at the bar, and there's no real usable, valuable content being shared, and I see notable people who are, they're literally well-known in crypto, quit because they can't stand either the tone of somebody's voice or the way they're talking or the content's useless. Or you have some emergency as far as certain people think, wait, my wallet just went to zero. What the heck's going on here? And they dial into this under the auspice that it's going to directly answer their questions. And we get into, and then the other part of the AMA, yes, you should answer any question because that's the whole thing. However, you should preface that people need to read X, whatever X is. There was some document we put out. There was some content we put out. If you're getting people in your AMA who are asking rudimentary questions, and they're repeatedly asking rudimentary questions, your documentation sucks. I want to just put that clear. So if we hear people, let's say it's a migration. I'm not pointing any fingers. Let's say it's a migration. Let's say your migration was announced at the last minute. I'm not pointing any fingers. But when you do that, if you have people who say, I thought I sent it, but I sent the wrong token to you. First of all, that's not the right forum for that question, although it's Ask Me Anything. What you should do at the front of the call is say, if your question is not directly related to this migration, please contact XY. And then you have one or two people who are on tap to answer those inquiries so that you don't derail the cadence of this session. Or questions that say, this literally happened. Questions that say, okay, so, what are we supposed to do? And then people respond, say, we're going to take care of it. You're going to get an airdrop. Oh, okay, so what do I do with my existing tokens? I want you to be understood and clear, crystal clear, that if you're getting these kinds of questions, your documentation sucks and your communication sucked, which is what caused those questions. Your outlets for communicating were not effective. Your documentation sucked because you're getting rudimentary questions you shouldn't be getting. And you didn't preface it at the top of the call to say, when you have these that are unrelated, talk here. Here's the FAQ that goes methodical detail about what you need to know with the commonly asked questions. And you start with this. You share it out and say, I want everybody to read this before we get into our questions, because none of these questions really should be asked because we answer them here. If you have follow-on questions as a result of this FAQ, DM this person over here. That's called management. You're managing the cadence of these calls. I understand the desire to just have a community, quote unquote, but at the same time, you have people in there who really are pissed off because you did a very poorly planned out migration, and then you're doing an AMA under the auspice of getting answers, and they're not getting the answers. Or my personal favorite, Satama, who just cherry picks questions, and then the people get pissed off by the time they're off the call because they see you're not getting the tough questions asked to you, dude, and you're basically ducking the smoke. Why don't you let anybody ask any questions? That's what an AMA is. How about this? How about we just retitle it as a press release? Great. Then you're off the hook because you can just talk from your podium and not worry about anybody's question or concern. The reason we don't do that is because we want to be one of the cool kids. Instead, all you're doing is pissing people off because you think that you're doing a good service, and in fact, you're making people more angry because you're not being fully transparent, because you're not accepting the smoke. And I'm talking both sides. Summary number one, if people have rudimentary questions, your documentation sucks. Question number two, why are you calling it an AMA when you don't want to take on questions that you don't like and you don't want the smoke? At some point, we either have to stop saying the term AMA, and I'm cool with that, or we have to get back to where people can truly ask anything. And in fact, what we should do is embrace people who are critical of you and see how good you are at responding to those questions when they are fair criticisms. For example, why are we asked the question about why are we delaying and why were there so many delays with Citem ask the specifics behind what went wrong? And say, I want somebody who wants that smoke. Somebody's going to challenge me on these questions so we can lay it to rest. When you run from it, you just look more sketchy. For these other ones over here, where we're talking like good old boys club and acting like we're at the bar, how about we stop calling it an AMA? How about we do better documentation first? How about we do a plan to where we're doing more time instead of a 3-day crunch? How about we take the time to really think through all the questions somebody's going to ask because they're common sense questions? And we put together strong documentation and we present it at the front of the session so that nobody is surprised and nobody is shocked. And we probably have people, okay, that answered my question, and then I can listen or I can leave. Does this sound like it makes too much sense to anybody else?